Alright, hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Crypto, Coffee and LoFi. I didn't get to upload last week. I was a little bit busy trading NFTs and head was deep in the market, working on a few other projects as well. But back again this week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for London Open. Not a lot has changed since the previous episodes. Bitcoin's still in an obvious bull market. We didn't quite get the retrace below these lows that we were expecting. ETH did, however, and I just want to go over that. It's going to be more of a tutorial based video. So yeah, obviously we are in a really strong bull market. The all-time high, I think, is going to get swept out in the next few days. Now, what happens after we take the all-time high, we'll have to wait and see. But I'll point out exactly how I'll be executing my positions. So if you're new here, I'm just using the same pattern to find accumulation and distribution. I'm using that same pattern to find support, resistance, and as my entry trigger. So that pattern is essentially just a head and shoulders. So I look for a high. I then look for that high to be swept. Once we then sweep that high, I look for us to break below the low that was responsible for taking it. Now, once we return, I then look for the same pattern to form again. Now, this is the first sign of distribution, and this is essentially the entry trigger that I use. And I'll point out an example here in a sec. So if at any point in these videos you're interested and you want to look a little bit deeper, click the link in the description below, pick up a copy of the strategy. Right, so like I just said, I think we're going to head into all-time highs. If we take a look at the previous week's candle here, there's nothing bearish about how that just closed. Now, what could happen, however, is we could take out this weekly high and then see a bit of a pullback. Now, as long as we pull back and maintain, as long as we pull back and stay within this previous weekly range, then I would consider it bullish. Now, any move inside of this previous weekly range that is then followed by accumulation, now using the same pattern to find the accumulation that we used for distribution. So what would that look like? So let's say we sweep out the high. You then look for reaccumulation. So you look for a low, you wait for the low to be swept, and then you look for a break above the high that was responsible for taking the low. Once we get that, you look for the return, and then you look for the same pattern to form again. It doesn't have to form or look exactly like this, but I think you kind of get the point. I'm just using this pattern to read market structure, essentially. So we don't have to sweep out that high, the previous week's high either. We may, going into London Open here, we may want to take out this low. So we do have the pattern here. So we swept out these equal lows. Breaking above the high is responsible for taking those lows. Now we don't have the second confirmation. So the close above here is the first. The second would be a sweep followed by another break right here. So I don't really like to predict. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll mark out these patterns, look for obvious targets. So once we have the patterns, once the patterns form, and once we see an obvious target, then I wait for lower time frame reactions around this session open, or London Open, or New York Open, where I'll then look for an entry trigger and trade the trend. So if you haven't already, go over to my tutorial videos and find the smart way to read a trend. Now watch this. I know a lot of people think that while you're in a trending market, as long as you keep making higher lows and higher highs, that means that the trend is intact. And then as soon as you make a lower low and a lower high, that would mean that the trend is starting to break. And that isn't necessarily true. There are a few factors that I take into consideration, but one of the main factors I take into consideration is that price is able to make lower lows and lower highs as long as we maintain the previous levels of accumulation. So even if we make lower lows and lower highs, as long as the level that we're retesting, for example here, is holding, and as long as there is accumulation here, well, then we should be good to continue the trend. And I hope that isn't too confusing. I explained it a little bit better in this video here, but a good example of that would be this. So it's literally textbook, and you can go back and look at my videos from all the way back at the start of the year right at the top while I was trading inside of these ranges. And you can, a few times we saw a flush out, for example, below this low, where I then got into a long, below this low where I got into a long, below these lows where I got into a long, and I recorded all of this, so you can go and check out those previous episodes. But we saw the same thing yesterday. Now, just because, and we did catch a short here too, but I'll go over that in a sec also. So here we have higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, but then suddenly we take a dip. Now, everybody trades differently, but I would assume that the majority of people would think that that is then a trend break, okay? But if you look a little bit lower, you can see we have a sweep here and then a break-in structure, and we hadn't actually tested that. So I knew, even though we were about to see a breakdown below all of these lows, that it would just be a liquidity grab to retest support. Now, I'm not trying to predict that necessarily, but what I would then do is wait for reaccumulation to form once we retest this level, which we did. So yeah, I think I'm going to end that topic here, but essentially, just because we're making lower lows and lower highs on the lower time frames here doesn't mean that the trend is starting to break. Go and check out this tutorial if you want to look a little bit deeper into that. So this is all called on Twitter and in the Discord, by the way. This isn't hindsight. So, fuck, it's a gobful. So for Bitcoin, looking for a sweep of that low into the support. Okay, Ethereum, a similar idea here. A sweep of this low into this level of support. Not entering anything yet, just looking for the lower time frame reaction, which would be something like that. Okay. Atom. Alright. So I do like to use trend lines, but only when I'm pairing them up with the easy and easy out strategy. I have another tutorial right at the start of my channel if you'd like to see that. But essentially, I look for the breakout of the trend line, and as long as I'm seeing my patterns form on that breakout, then I would assume that's just extra confluence. So yesterday, we swept out this key low here. All right, breaking out of this trend line, sweeping out this key low. Now, all I'm going to be doing this session is looking for an entry trigger. So we've taken the liquidity. Now, if we start to see reaccumulation, we could assume that that was in fact just a liquidity grab, and that these levels should hold as support now. So if we do get the reaccumulation here, then we can look to target equal highs or upside liquidity, something like this. We can target up here. Just keeping it simple. No entry yet though, because this is one confirmation and I only enter when there is two confirmations. I'll look for the lower time frame entry on the retest there. This was posted in the Discord group last week, but it doesn't get much more perfect than this. So we had our distribution top along with the rest of the market, but then as we drop down, we sweep out these lows right here. Let's just clean up the chart. So we sweep out these lows and then we break above the highs responsible for taking those lows. And then we continue to accumulate and trend up. Okay, now we see a small retrace and then we see the same pattern forming again. So we sweep out this low, break above the high, sweep out this low, break above the high, break out of this trend line, retest, and then form the same pattern again. So like I was explaining, I only enter the position when it's I only enter a trade that's breaking out of a trend line if it's in line with the strategy. So, and then we retest, and what do you know? We form the same pattern again. So you can use this pattern with almost any strategy and just use it as an entry trigger, as confluence. So this was posted in the Discord group, and I posted proof on Twitter as well, not hindsight. So we take out this low, break above the high, then take out this low, break above the high, retest. Right here's the entry trigger with my stop right below. Now I closed the majority of this position this morning, but that's fine. If I do get a re-entry, then I'll be looking to take it. I wouldn't be surprised if over the next week we get a move up into all-time highs. And once we do take the all-time high, I guess, once we take it, then looking for reaccumulation inside of this range to get long. Okay. I have entered a decent sized position on this. I do think we have a lot of room to go. So again, we saw this big drop off, some consolidation, and then a breakout of that consolidation. Now once we revisit, we start to accumulate now. We didn't see any obvious accumulation in terms of my strategy anyway here at this level, but because this is a decent level of consolidation and we did break out of it, once we return, if we see the reaccumulation here, we can assume that this is just a resistance support flip. So we've broken the resistance, now we're forming support. How do we know it's support? Because price is accumulating. So if we go onto the lower time frames, sweeping out these equal lows, breaking above this high, or even this high right here, returning, sweeping out this low, breaking above this high. Now we swept out this low, just waiting for a break above there. And like I explained, I do trade the trend line breaks as long as they're in line with the easy and easy out strategy. So if we break up above there, close above, and then retest, then we can look to get long. If this does start going, then obviously all-time high is the next target, but we could easily head up much higher from there. Yeah, I think I'm going to actually end that here. So just to recap, we're obviously bullish. Any retrace into the previous week's range on Bitcoin and Ethereum is a long, as long as we see reaccumulation. Pretty much all alts are printing a similar pattern. I think we're going to see a substantial run to the upside as long as we don't see any obvious distribution, which I don't think we will. Check out all of the tutorials that I posted months and months ago. I know a lot of you have questions you posted in the comments, but a lot of those questions can actually be answered here. I know I obviously try to get you guys to buy the strategy, but a lot of information is already sitting here for free. Obviously just not laid out in a kind of course structure, but the information's still there, so you can go and check it out. No worries. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.